We have a wonderful 5-year-old son, Tommy. I need to share my story because I'm at my breaking point and don't know what to do anymore. Mike and I met in a coffee shop near my college campus. I was a senior, studying accounting, and he was working as a software developer at a growing tech company. He came in every morning for coffee, and we started talking. He was different from the college guys I knew, mature, ambitious, and seemed to have his life together. After dating for a year, he proposed on my graduation day. Everything felt perfect. The first 2 years of our marriage were like a dream. We both had good jobs, bought a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, and started planning our future. Mike was making great money as a senior developer, and I was building my career at an accounting firm. When I got pregnant with Tommy, Mike was over the moon. He painted the nursery himself, read every parenting book he could find, and even took paternity leave to help with the baby. Tommy's early years were wonderful. Mike was an amazing father. He would wake up early on weekends to let me sleep in, take Tommy to the park, and spend hours building blanket forts in the living room. Our friends used to joke that he was setting an impossibly high standard for other dads in our social circle. The changes started so gradually that I barely noticed at first. About 2 years ago, Mike began coming home late from work. He said he was working on a big project, and I believed him. He'd always been dedicated to his job. Then he started missing dinner, then Tommy's bedtime stories, then entire weekends would go by with him barely leaving his home office. I finally learned the truth when his boss called me. Mike had been skipping work, missing deadlines, and showing up to meetings unprepared. The company was letting him go. When I confronted Mike, he broke down and admitted he'd been gambling online during work hours. He promised it wasn't serious, just a hobby that got out of hand, and said he'd find a new job right away. But he didn't look for work. Instead, he spent more time gambling, claiming he needed to win back what he'd lost before job hunting. Our savings started disappearing, first in small amounts, then larger sums. I'd check our account and find hundreds or thousands missing. Every time I confronted him, he had excuses. The money was just temporary, he had a system, he was about to hit a big win. I started taking extra clients at work to cover our bills. My parents offered to help with Tommy, watching him after preschool so I could work longer hours. Mike barely noticed, he was too absorbed in his poker games. He started sleeping all day and staying up all night. The house fell into chaos. I was working, taking care of Tommy, doing all the housework, while Mike lived in his own world. One day, while doing laundry, I found a small bag of white powder in his jeans pocket. I knew what it was but didn't want to believe it. When I confronted him, he claimed it was just to help him focus during long poker sessions. I was horrified. We had a young child in the house, and he was using cocaine. Throughout all this, my cousin Rachel was my biggest support. She's 2 years younger than me, and we grew up like sisters. When she moved to our city for work last year, she became a regular at our house, helping with Tommy and listening to my worries about Mike. She seemed genuinely concerned about him, often defending him and suggesting I be more understanding of his struggles. Last month, I got a call from Tommy's school saying he had a fever. I left work early to pick him up, not bothering to call ahead since Rachel had a key and often watched him when he was sick. I walked into my house to find Mike and Rachel on our couch, his hands under her shirt, her lipstick smeared. They jumped apart when they saw me, but it was too late. Rachel ran out crying. Later she sent me a long text explaining that Mike had been pursuing her for months. He told her our marriage was over, that I was already planning to leave him, that he was lonely and misunderstood. She said she only gave in because she truly believed him and thought she was helping him through a difficult time. The betrayal cut deep, not just Mike's infidelity, but Rachel's willingness to believe him over our lifelong relationship. That night, after Tommy was asleep, I confronted Mike. His reaction shocked me. Instead of apologizing, he turned aggressive. He said I was to blame for everything, for not supporting him when he lost his job, for working too much, for not understanding his needs. When I pointed out that I was working extra hours to cover his gambling losses and taking care of our son alone, he stormed out. He disappeared for 2 days. No calls, no messages, nothing. Tommy kept asking where Daddy was, and I had to make excuses. When Mike finally came home, he acted like nothing had happened. He went straight to his computer and started playing poker again. Now I'm stuck in an impossible situation. I know I need to leave, for my sake and Tommy's. But I'm terrified of what that means. Even with my good job, supporting Tommy alone would be tough. Childcare in our area is expensive, and moving would mean taking Tommy away from his school and friends. Mike might be a terrible husband, but Tommy still adores him. On the rare occasions when Mike does pay attention to him, Tommy's whole face lights up. I've started secretly putting money aside in a separate account, but it's not much. Most of our savings are gone, and I recently discovered Mike has been missing our mortgage payments. I'm also worried about his drug use and what he might do if I try to leave. For now, I'm just existing. I go to work, take care of Tommy, cook, clean, and act normal around Mike. But inside, I'm screaming. I need advice. How do I protect my son while getting out of this marriage? Should I try one more time to help Mike, or is it too late? Has anyone dealt with a similar situation? Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your advice and support gave me the courage to take action, and I really needed that because things got much worse very quickly. The day after I posted, I decided to do a deep dive into our finances. I always handled the bills, but Mike managed our credit cards and investments since he used to be good with money. I created an online account with the credit reporting agencies, and what I found made me physically sick. Mike hadn't just been gambling away our savings, he had opened 3 credit cards in my name without my knowledge. I found statements showing over $30,000 in gambling debt spread across these cards. He had set up paperless billing and used my email to create accounts, but directed them to a folder I never checked. Some paper statements had come to our house, but he must have been intercepting the mail. When I confronted him with the statements, his reaction terrified me. Instead of showing remorse or trying to explain, he became defensive and angry. He started yelling about how I had no right to check his private financial matters. When I pointed out these were in my name, he claimed he had done it for our family, that he had a foolproof system to win everything back. He even pulled up his laptop to show me some gambling strategy website, trying to convince me that he was about to hit a big win that would solve everything. I told him I was considering divorce. That's when his demeanor completely changed. He broke down crying, fell to his knees, and started begging for another chance. He promised to go to Gamblers Anonymous, to get a job, to be a better father to Tommy. He seemed so sincere that for a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. That night, while he was in the shower, something made me check his phone. He had left it unlocked on the coffee table, unusual for him as he'd become very protective of it lately. What I found was worse than I imagined. Not only was he still messaging Rachel, talking about their connection and how they could be together once he figured things out, but he was also deeply involved with a drug dealer. The messages with the dealer were terrifying. Mike owed him $5,000, and the dealer was getting impatient. There were veiled threats about other ways to collect the debt. One message mentioned knowing where Tommy went to school. I felt my world collapsing. This wasn't just about a failing marriage anymore, my son was in danger. I called Mike's parents that same night. They live about an hour away and have always been wonderful to me and Tommy. When I told them everything, his mom started crying. Then she revealed something that changed everything. This wasn't Mike's first gambling addiction. He had a similar problem in college, losing thousands of his parents' money. They had bailed him out and helped him recover, but made him promise never to gamble again. They thought he had kept that promise. His parents immediately offered their guest house to me and Tommy. It was a small but comfortable 2-bedroom space behind their main house, completely private but close enough for support. His mom suggested I pack while Mike was out the next day. The next morning, I waited until Mike left for what he claimed was a job interview. I later learned he was meeting his dealer. His parents came over, and we started packing essentials, clothes, toys, important documents. We were almost finished loading the car when Mike came home unexpectedly. The scene that followed still haunts me. Mike completely lost control. He started throwing things, books, pictures, anything he could grab. He was screaming that I couldn't take his son, that he would find us, that he would make me regret this. His father, who I had always known as a gentleman, had to physically restrain him while his mom and I finished getting our things. Tommy was at school, thank God, but I knew then that I couldn't let my son come back to this house. We've been at his parents' guest house for almost 2 weeks now. Mike alternates between calling constantly with tearful apologies and sending threatening messages. He showed up at my work twice, causing such a scene that security had to remove him. My boss has been understanding, letting me work remotely when needed. Yesterday, Rachel appeared at my workplace. She was crying, saying she needed to tell me the truth. According to her, Mike had been manipulating everyone for months. She showed me messages where he had been harassing her, demanding she tell me the affair was all her fault, threatening to tell her employers some lies he had made up about her if she didn't comply. But the biggest shock came from Mike's former boss. He called me after hearing about our separation through mutual friends. He felt I needed to know the real reason Mike lost his job. It wasn't just about being late or missing deadlines. Mike had been embezzling from the company. Over 6 months, he had stolen nearly $50,000 through a scheme involving fake vendor payments. The company had agreed not to press charges if he repaid the money, which explained some of the mysterious loans he had taken out last year. Tommy is struggling to understand what's happening. He keeps asking when we're going home, when he can see his dad. Mike's parents are being incredible, helping with childcare and giving me time to figure out next steps. I've frozen all our joint accounts and reported the fraudulent credit cards. I met with a lawyer who says I have a strong case for full custody given Mike's addiction, the hidden debt, and the evidence of his threatening behavior. I'm still in shock, but at least now I can see clearly. Leaving was the right choice, especially after discovering the extent of his deception. I have another meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to start divorce proceedings. Update: 2 things have taken several shocking turns since my last update. The situation with Mike has gone from bad to worse, revealing even darker secrets than I imagined. 2 weeks ago, Mike was arrested at his parents' house. He had broken in while they were at work, thinking no one was home. Their security system alerted them to movement in the house, and they called the police. When officers arrived, they found Mike trying to break into his father's safe where they keep important documents. During the arrest, officers searched his car and found cocaine, along with prescription pills that weren't his. His parents were heartbroken but pressed charges. They said they had caught him trying to steal from them twice before but had kept it quiet, hoping he would seek help on his own. This time, they decided tough love was necessary. His mom told me through tears that enabling him had only made things worse. The arrest brought something even more disturbing to light. The police found detailed plans on his phone showing he'd been preparing to take Tommy. He had rented an apartment 3 states away under a false name and was in contact with someone who could provide fake documents. He had even been watching Tommy's school, learning the pickup routines. Reading those messages made me physically ill. Rachel came forward with more information about Mike's schemes. She hadn't just loaned him $15,000, she had also helped him get loans from other family members by vouching for his fake business ventures. She showed me a spreadsheet where Mike had tracked all his borrowing. The total was staggering, over $100,000 from various friends and relatives. Each loan came with a different story: a business opportunity, medical bills, home repairs. He had played on people's sympathy and trust, using his charm to convince them to help. Tommy's teacher called me last week with concerns. She noticed he'd become withdrawn and wasn't playing with other kids during recess. When she asked him to draw his family, he drew himself alone in a corner while the rest of the family was fighting. The school counselor suggested he might be dealing with trauma from all the recent changes. It broke my heart to realize how deeply my son had been affected by everything. Mike's parents have been my strongest support through all this. They helped me find a good lawyer and offered to testify about Mike's behavior if needed. His mom finally told me stories about his past that shed new light on everything. This pattern had started in his teens: the gambling, the manipulation, the stealing. They had helped him hide it, paid off his debts, sent him to private counseling. When he met me, they thought he had finally changed. His mom apologized tearfully for not warning me, saying they truly believed he had overcome his old habits. 3 of Mike's former co-workers reached out after hearing about his arrest. Each had a similar story. Mike had tried to involve them in various schemes over the years. He asked them to cover for him when he was gambling during work hours, tried to borrow money with elaborate stories, and even attempted to convince them to invest in non-existent business ventures. One co-worker admitted to lending him $10,000 for what Mike claimed was emergency surgery for Tommy, a surgery that never happened. The divorce is proceeding, but it's complicated by all the financial mess. My lawyer says it could take months to untangle everything and protect what's left of my assets. The good news is that I have solid proof the credit cards were opened fraudulently, so I should be able to get those removed from my credit report. The bad news is that some of Mike's gambling debts were from illegal sources, and there's concern about potential threats from these people. I'm documenting everything for the custody hearing. Between the drug charges, the attempted kidnapping plans, and the financial fraud, my lawyer says Mike will be lucky to get supervised visitation. His parents are willing to testify about his history of addiction and deception, which strengthens my case even more. Update 3: I'm writing this final update to close this chapter of my life and share where things stand now. The past 6 months have been challenging, but I finally feel like I'm on solid ground. Mike took a plea deal for the drug possession and burglary charges. He's serving 8 months in a rehabilitation facility with 3 years of probation to follow. The judge made it clear that any violation would result in immediate jail time. His parents visit him weekly, saying he seems to be doing better in the structured environment. I maintain strict no contact except for matters directly related to Tommy. The custody arrangement was finalized last month. I have full custody, with Mike getting only supervised visits once a month at a family center. The judge was particularly concerned about the evidence of his kidnapping plans and drug use. Even these supervised visits are contingent on Mike staying clean and continuing treatment after his release. The financial aftermath has been messy. The divorce is final, and the judge ruled I'm not responsible for the credit card debt Mike created in my name. However, I'm still dealing with the people he borrowed money from. Some, like his old co-worker who he tricked with a fake surgery story, have been understanding. Others still think I must have known about his schemes and want me to repay his debts. My lawyer is handling these claims. Rachel's attempts at reconciliation have been persistent. She repaid the $15,000 Mike borrowed from her, directing it to Tommy's college fund as a gesture of apology. While I appreciate the gesture, I told her I need permanent space. The trust is broken, and some things can't be fixed. She finally stopped trying to contact me last month. Tommy and I moved into our own apartment 3 weeks ago. It's smaller than our old house and the commute to work is longer, but it's ours. Tommy has his own room which he decorated with superhero posters. He's sleeping through the night again and made new friends at his new school. His counselor says he's showing positive signs of adjustment, though he still has moments of sadness about his dad. Mike's parents have been incredible, but I'm gradually creating healthy boundaries there too. They watch Tommy 1 weekend a month, which gives me some time to myself, but I've made it clear that I need to build an independent life. They understand and respect this. I landed a new position at work with better pay and remote options. This flexibility helps with childcare costs and lets me be more present for Tommy. I've started putting money aside each month in a separate emergency fund, something I learned the hard way to maintain. The hardest part has been helping Tommy understand everything. He still asks about his dad, especially around bedtime when Mike used to read to him. I've been honest with him in age-appropriate ways, explaining that Daddy is sick and getting help to get better. His counselor says this approach is healthy, acknowledging the truth while maintaining hope. Looking back at my original post, I barely recognized that scared, confused woman who was trying to hold everything together. Sometimes I wonder if I should have seen the signs earlier, but I know now that Mike was skilled at hiding his addiction and manipulation. What matters is that I found the strength to leave when I did. To everyone who supported me through this journey, thank you. Your advice helped me stay strong when I wanted to give up. To anyone in a similar situation, trust your instincts. Don't wait until things get worse. There is life after addiction and betrayal, and while it might not be the life you planned, it can still be beautiful. I won't be making any more updates. This chapter of my life is closed, and I'm focused on building a better future for Tommy and myself.